Reanne Evans, a name that should have been celebrated in the world of snooker, but instead, her career took a turn that no one saw coming. What happened? How did one of the greatest female snooker players find herself on the losing end of the game? Born in Dudley, England, she discovered her passion for snooker at a young age. By the time she was a teenager, it was clear that she had an extraordinary gift. Her precision, focus, and ability to read the table set her apart from her peers. But what truly defined Evans's career wasn't just her skill with a cue. It was her determination to break through the barriers that had long kept women on the sidelines of professional snooker. Snooker has traditionally been viewed as a man's game. The image of snooker players in smoky, dimly lit rooms, exchanging banter while sizing up their next shot, has been ingrained in British culture for decades. Women were often seen as spectators rather than participants, and the idea of a woman excelling in the sport was, for many, simply unimaginable. This cultural perception created an environment where women who wanted to compete in snooker had to overcome more than just the physical and mental challenges of the game. They had to fight against deeply entrenched sexism. Reanne Evans was well aware of these challenges, but she refused to let them define her career. By her early 20s, she had already become a dominant force in the Women's World Snooker Championship, winning her first title in 2005. But that was just the beginning. Over the next decade, Evans went on to win the championship an incredible 10 times in a row. Her dominance in the women's game was unprecedented, and it wasn't just a matter of talent. It was a testament to her relentless work ethic and her refusal to be discouraged by the barriers she faced. Despite her success, Evans found herself struggling with a harsh reality. No matter how many titles she won, she couldn't make a living from the sport. The prize money for women's tournaments was a fraction of what the men earned. In 2012, for example, when Evans won her 8th world title, she took home just £450. In contrast, Ronnie O'Sullivan, who won the men's title that same year, earned £250,000. This staggering disparity wasn't just about money, it was about respect. It was a clear signal that the achievements of women in snooker were not valued on the same level as those of men. But Evans wasn't content to dominate the women's game. She wanted to compete against the best in the world, regardless of gender. In 2010, she was allowed to do just that, when she was awarded a wildcard to compete on the World Snooker Tour. This was a significant moment, not just for Evans, but the sport as a whole. It was a chance to prove that women could compete with men on equal footing, and Evans was determined to make the most of it. However, the reality of competing on the men's tour was far more challenging than Evans had anticipated. She faced opponents who had years of experience playing at the highest level, and who were used to the intense pressure of major tournaments. More than that, she had to deal with the weight of expectations, not just her own, but those of the countless women who saw her as a trailblazer, fighting for their places in the sport. Before we move on, please be sure to subscribe to our channel. In 2015, Evans had the opportunity to make history. She was drawn to face former world champion Ken Doherty in the first qualifying round for the Men's World Championship. If she could win 3 matches, she would become the first woman to reach snooker's biggest stage, the Crucible Theatre in Sheffield. This was the moment everyone had been waiting for. It wasn't just a match, it was a statement. A victory would have been a milestone for women in snooker, a signal that the barriers were finally coming down. The pressure was immense. Evans was not only up against a former world champion, but she was also carrying the hopes of an entire movement on her shoulders. The match began with both players showcasing their skill and determination. But as the frames progressed, it became clear that Evans was fighting more than just her opponent. The years of systemic sexism, the mental and emotional toll of constantly having to prove herself, and the lack of financial support had all taken their toll. Despite her best efforts, Evans lost the match. It was a heartbreaking defeat, but it was also a reminder of the harsh realities that women in snooker and many other sports face. The barriers were still very much in place, and Evans's loss highlighted the gap that still existed between the opportunities available to male and female players. But rather than being discouraged, Evans continued to push forward. She knew that her fight wasn't just about winning matches, it was about changing the sport for future generations of women. After the match with Doherty, Evans continued to compete on the women's circuit, where she remained the dominant player. but the financial struggles persisted. Despite her incredible achievements, she was unable to make a sustainable living from snooker. The disparity in prize money was not just unfair, it was a reflection of the broader inequality in the sport. For Evans, this meant that she had to balance her love for the game with the practical realities of supporting herself and her family. At one point, she considered taking a part-time job to make ends meet, but the demands of professional snooker made that nearly impossible. "I was thinking of getting a part-time job," she said, "but who is going to give you the time off to practice? There aren't many jobs that will give you the time off that you need to travel and play the events. It's a catch-22 situation. You either play or you don't." This dilemma was one that many female athletes could relate to, the struggle to balance their passion for their sport with the need to make a living. Despite these challenges, Evans remained determined to break down the barriers in snooker. She looked to Serena Williams as a role model, an athlete who had faced similar challenges in tennis and had risen to the top through sheer determination and talent. Evans admired Williams' ability to stay focused on her goals, regardless of what others thought. "She's a machine at what she does," Evans said. "She doesn't care what anybody thinks. She just does her thing." But while Evans admired Williams' resilience, she also recognized that the challenges in snooker were different. Unlike tennis, where women's competitions are well established and offer significant financial rewards, snooker has not yet reached that level of equality. There were no major women's tournaments with prize money that could rival the men's, and the opportunities for women to compete against the best players in the world were limited. For Evans, this meant that her fight wasn't just about winning matches. It was about changing the sport from the ground up. Despite these challenges, Evans never gave up. She continued to compete, to win, and to inspire. Her presence in the sport forced people to reconsider their assumptions about women in snooker. It wasn't just about her success, it was about the message she was sending to the world that women belong in snooker and they deserve the same opportunities and respect as men. But while Evans' career has been marked by incredible achievements, it has also been a story of missed opportunities. The barriers she faced, financial, cultural, and systemic, prevented her from reaching the heights that her talent deserved. The lack of financial support, in particular, was a major factor. Unlike her male counterparts, Evans couldn't rely on snooker as her sole source of income. This limited her ability to train, to compete in more tournaments, and to fully realize her potential. So, what went wrong? Why didn't Reanne Evans become the global snooker star that everyone knew she could be? The truth is, it wasn't just one thing. It was a combination of factors. The systemic sexism in the sport, the lack of financial support, the cultural barriers, and the mental toll of constantly having to prove herself all played a role. It was a system that was stacked against her from the start, and despite her best efforts, those barriers proved too much to overcome. But Reanne Evans didn't lose. Not really. Because while she may not have reached the Crucible Theatre, she did something even more important. She made people sit up and take notice. She made it impossible to ignore the fact that women deserve a place in snooker, just as much as men. Her career may not have turned out the way we all hoped, but her impact on the sport is immeasurable. She's inspired a new generation of female players, and her name is now synonymous with breaking barriers in snooker. That's a wrap for this video. Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and for more snooker content, click on the screen right now.